afternoon, and welcome to episode 12 of International Expansion Explained. My guest today is Charlotte Carter, who is the founder of Carter Bags. And that is a UK based brand of ladies' laptop bags. So Charlotte started her brand because she was really frustrated that she couldn't find an affordable laptop bag that was really designed for women's needs. And so she set out to solve the problem, her own, as many founders do, I think, set out to solve her own problem by starting a company who did exactly that. And having started out, she then decided, because it wasn't difficult enough to start a brand from scratch, that she would make sure that the products were all made from sustainable materials. And so everything has been made from vegan, sustainable, recyclable materials. Charlotte, welcome to the show and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. You're lucky to I get really nervous on live shows and stuff like that, so I don't really like do them very often, but I know you, Kathryn, have been so helpful in the past, and we've messaged a few times before, and I love following your content. So I was like, I thought I couldn't turn down the opportunity to have a chat with you and find out a little bit more about you as well, and what you get up to, because your life looks so interesting. So thank you so much. And it's pushed me out my comfort zone a little bit. So I can see that Sarah and Susan are here. Hi.
And Stefan, yes. Susan says they're a lovely bunch. I would say yes. There's nobody on board up until now, I think, who bites. I don't think so. I mean, we could ask Stefan, he's as the Belgian in the bunch, but no, I think we're quite safe right now. But I wanted to ask you, because I think when people see Carter bags, they don't actually think of, like, it's not like the typical kind of international business in the same way that a lot of the companies I'm working with, because you're not really exporting at the moment due to supply chain questions, let's say, or challenges. But you're producing in China, right? So
yes, I am. So that's been really interesting. And actually, when I first launched, I did ship internationally, but it became more complicated, because although I launched and it was, we were kind of like in and out of lockdown. I actually can't remember if we were in lockdown or not when I launched it now. I don't think we were. But they began adding like COVID charges, and so much has changed since I started the business, even though it wasn't even that long ago, that I just had to stop international because it became such a headache, which is a shame, because initially about 30% of my sales were from America, and I get a really high hit rate from America on my website, and I get a lot of messages from people saying that they love the product and they really want to own a bag, and they really want to support the business, and at the moment I just am not able to do it. So it's, I'm looking at ways of resolving that at the moment, but it is a bit of a gamble. So I think right now my main focus needs to be in the UK, and just try and really build some strong foundations, because I started on a shoestring budget and I don't have an investor. I don't have like a huge bank account full of money. So if I make a wrong move, I've got to be able to afford that wrong move if it goes wrong. I can't really take a huge risk that I could potentially lose a lot of money, because it will be game over for me, kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think, let's face it, going international, it can get expensive really quickly if you make some kind of misjudgment, or you think that the demand's going to be different to what it is. But let's just go back for a minute to like when you were very first starting out, how did you make those decisions about where you were actually going to produce the product? Because I find that's really interesting. And we've had Laura Cortez on. She was one of my earlier interviewees, and we had a really good chat about, sourcing in China. But I think initially you also looked around for other options, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I came to sort of putting the ideas into action, I had been working with a few people as their content creator for their content for LinkedIn. And really, I think that's such a good job to have. And definitely through lockdown, I learned so much from working really, really closely with like founders of businesses and directors. And I got a real great insight into their world and how they were doing things. And really, that's when I started to think like, okay, well, actually, like this person's doing this, and actually, like I could probably do that.
They only cook with in German. There's a saying that says that the person only cooks with water as well, right? That people,
Yeah,
everybody cooks with water. Everybody needs to have the same basic needs in life, and a
yeah.
founder is not some kind of god on a pedestal.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's just, we're all people at the end of the day. And like obviously we all have different opportunities and different environments and different situations. But yeah, when I was working with them, it really helped like expand my knowledge. And I fortunately was working with someone who was working in China. And I was also working with someone who launched 3 e-commerce businesses in
Wow.
lockdown. Yeah, she's pretty
Oh God.
incredible person, actually. She was my main inspiration for starting Carter Bags, as Alice Rowan Hall. She has a company called Rowan Homes. So she actually launched 3 businesses, and I had catch up with her and every now and then, and kind of just I was blown away by how much she worked and her work ethic and her ideas and everything. And I just thought, you know what, like I'm going to give it a try. So I had like a small bit of knowledge from seeing that and just witnessing it, and also from a couple of other clients as well. I'd had to do a lot of research in order to produce their content. So yeah, I was just consuming so much information on a weekly basis on these topics. And I did do a lot of research as well when I looked to actually start manufacturing, and I could not believe the situation in the UK with manufacturing. And I think it's so sad. And
Yeah.
I've even gone as far as to I'm not based in Portsmouth anymore. I'm in Somerset now, but there's a shop in Portsmouth, and there's a lady that works in there, and I think she's in her early 60s, and she's fab. And so I went in and spoke to her because she does leather work and she does
Mhm.
like repairs and stuff. And I wanted to see, like, would she know anyone? Because I was getting nowhere via the internet. Anyone that I found that was even involved remotely in bag manufacturing were all outsourcing it to Asia anyway. So
Okay.
why would I go through them? Why wouldn't I go and look into it myself? And I really wanted to look for a UK option, but yeah, through speaking to her, she had like such an amazing work history actually. And she did use to manufacture what are they called? What are the big like suede kind of coats with the sheepskin lining?
Ah,
What are they called? You know what I mean?
I know
Yeah,
what you
so
mean.
she was working on them back in the day, and she was talking to me about the shops that she used to go to that all like most towns and villages had like boutiques, and the clothes would be made at a local level, and they had like skilled seamstresses, they had pattern cutters, they had all of that. And she said that the whole industry just became like completely decimated, and a lot of it was outsourced abroad for cheaper labor. And
there's a lot of that there's a lot of it in Poland, Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania. Those countries have got a lot of, at village level, a lot of seamstresses and people who are working in the kind of textile.
That's amazing. And I think it's a real shame that we've kind of lost that here. Like for me personally, that's something I would invest in. Like if someone was doing that locally, I would go and buy their clothes, because I think it's so much better for the environment. It's so much more sustainable, and as well, you know where those clothes have come from and who they've been produced by as well. But so I had like a really amazing chat with this lady, and she gave me so much information, and I just realized like how radically things have changed over the last few decades, because it's not actually been a huge amount of time. It's probably since the 70s that it's massively changed, and we've gone into this mass consumerism. And I think it's kind of sad, because even the other day I stumbled across a factory that I thought was manufacturing in the UK. You can use their car park when you go to see like nearby tourist attractions, and you have to go in to pay. So I was like, oh my god, like I'm like walking in, seeing all this machinery and like all these products in the forefront of the store. And I went in and I was like, oh, are you manufacturing like these shoes here? This is incredible. And they were like, yeah, no, we buy most of it in. And I'm like, we're in Somerset. Even the sheepskins, they buy it from abroad, which is crazy, because there is no shortage of sheeps around here, let me tell you. Sheep everywhere. So it's sad, but it's just, I mean, I've looked into it, manufacturing here. I've also tried to explore manufacturing in Europe, and it's really hard because there is a language barrier. And in addition to that, what happened, as you will know, during the last 12 months, there has been like the shipping crisis going on. There's been like local lockdowns and stuff going on in China as well. And so a lot of people have been forced to reconsider where they're manufacturing. And so there are some bigger companies that have moved their manufacturing over to Europe. And a lot of the manufacturers are now like literally at full capacity. They won't even reply. And the minimum order quantities are even higher than China, and the cost is like extraordinary. So I found someone that said they could manufacture my bags in the UK, and not including the materials, they said it would cost about £600. So obviously that's not a viable option, because I don't think
it doesn't exactly fall under the title of affordable, does it?
So I was like, right, okay, well, that's not going to work. And then the quotes that I had from a Spanish manufacturer I was speaking to is literally the same price that I'm selling the bag at retail at the moment. So it's really difficult to find another option outside of China that is also as skilled, because I have started to look at different parts of Africa and Kenya and stuff like that, but finding people like
finding a reliable partner is hard.
And they've got to have the capacity as well to be able to make those bags at, I'm now ordering like 800 bags at a time. So if it's a couple of people, that they're not going to be able to manufacture them quickly enough as well.
No, and you don't want people, I mean, but it's really difficult. I mean, it is really difficult, because on the one hand, if you're looking for a sustainable business, then you would like to have something which is which is closer to where you're based rather than necessarily on the opposite side of the world. That doesn't matter whether it's China or Vietnam or somewhere in that region, it's still, from a sustainability point of view, it's still the opposite side of the world. And on the other
100%.
hand, you come back to the fact that China is simply, I know China has a reputation for producing a lot of cheap stuff, but China also has very skilled workers, especially in this kind of handicraft type
100%.
industries. And you, from a price perspective, yes, you can beat them if you go to countries like, if you move into Indonesia or you move into Vietnam or Bangladesh. But
You also run the
starting to
risk
get other
then, though.
problems as well.
Yeah, and one of the things that I have been like really careful of is making sure that, you know, any factory that we partner with is BSCI, they're signed up to the initiative,
Yes.
because
Yes.
it's so important, you know. And in the past, and I can always remember when I was younger as well, hearing stories about how things have been made, and you know, you go into high street shops and you think, oh, it's a high street shop, it's a reputable brand like Marks and Spencer, Zara, Primark. I personally, I don't shop in Primark now because I know about some of the practices that go on in those factories, and I just absolutely will not shop in Primark. But yeah, you know, all of these high street brands have been found guilty of using slave trade and slave labor, and there's no other way of putting it. And I think the fashion industry, some businesses are just so big, like how can they actually control or know what's going on in all of their processes? And I quite often think this about businesses, that some businesses are just so big, that there's no way of knowing, and unless you are, and like how are they monitoring that? How many factories are they needing to partner with to get that many units? Have they actually got someone going around all of those factories, and when their production is going on, and going and like physically having a presence there? And like, you know, because as far as I'm concerned, it's just a piece of paper that says, yeah, we asked them and they said they don't do that. That's not actually good enough, in my opinion. It's a load of rubbish.
Yeah, and it's quite hard to, I mean, even if you work in a company who does audit their suppliers, then your audit, even if you do kind of spot check type audits and turn up unannounced, that is still just, well, it's just like taking a picture, isn't it? That's the situation today, but that doesn't mean that it's going to look like that next week or
100%.
in 3 weeks' time.
And the reality is, unless you are there on the ground and you're there every single day and you actually work inside that factory, then you can only really go by audits, certification, you know,
references.
References, speaking to the staff, doing like video call walk rounds, and obviously paying third parties that are on the ground to go and actually have a walk round and go and, you know, engage with that factory face to face as well. That's all you can do. But I think that the price is quite indicative of whether or not there is any malpractice. And I think that, you know, if you're constantly just trying to get the cheapest price and you're not concerned about anything else, and you will inevitably be involved in part of that chain. So I think that, you know, that has got to be considered as well. If you want to be supporting businesses that are doing things the right way, then you've got to be prepared to pay the price as well, I think.
Yeah, I think that is true in whatever industry you're in and wherever it is that you're looking to source products from. It doesn't matter, even if you're looking to source products from Germany, if you are purely looking for the very cheapest price, then somewhere they're going to have cut corners in order to be able to offer you that price, aren't they? So you've got to be conscious of that. But just maybe you can tell me a little bit, how did you, when you were very first looking for a manufacturer, how did you go about finding a manufacturer? What kind of criteria were you looking for, or did you have recommendations? Because I think
I
there's
did. Yeah.
if you look online, there are just so many potential suppliers out there that you
Yeah.
can be just overwhelmed not knowing where to start.
Yeah, no, that's true. So I recently started working with a new manufacturer actually. So I can tell you a little bit about how I found them and what
Mm-hmm.
I've sort of done. So again, I think for anyone that's starting out or looking to work with a manufacturer, then it's always a good idea if you can get references from people that you know. That's not always possible. And it depends on what you're trying to do. So if you don't know anyone that's doing anything similar or that knows any manufacturers, then the best place is to start. There's a website called Made in China, and I think it is a really brilliant resource because when you can search any word in there and it will bring up a list of products that you can buy like wholesale direct from the manufacturers, and from there you can go in and you can start to do a little bit of research. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't approach people directly on Made in China unless that's the only platform that you can find them on. But what it's good for is identifying who's a manufacturer and who's a reseller, because there are a lot of resellers that advertise as though they're the manufacturer, but they're actually not the manufacturer. You're then working with a third party, and you're then probably going to get a third party that's based in China to then go and interact with that factory as well. So you've got a third party, you and the factory, and you don't really want it that way. You want to be working direct with the factory. In my experience, that is the best possible way of doing things, and then you can monitor things properly.
And I think that also means that if you're working directly with the manufacturer, you're also working with a manufacturer who has some experience of working internationally. You're not working with a manufacturer who basically who feels no moral obligation, let's say, to you, because they don't know who you are, they don't care who you are. They're working with the two levels of middlemen who were in between. And it's different if you're actually working directly with somebody, isn't it? It's different to cheat. Let's say if you want to cheat somebody, it's different to do that to somebody who you work directly with than it is to, because you have a relationship with that person. And especially for China, building a relationship with the factory or building a relationship with whoever you want to do business with is so important.
It is really important. You have got to be really, really careful of that, which is why I'm saying look out for who's a reseller and who's a genuine manufacturer. You want to deal with manufacturer direct, because if you have got a middleman or you've got a rep that's negotiating everything for you, actually, I think that that's not a good thing, and there's not much recall there because you haven't got that direct line of communication with the manufacturer. So yeah, on Made in China, when you find like a product that's similar to something that you'd like to produce, click on the manufacturer, and it may say manufacturer, but go and have a look at what products they've listed. Because if, for example, they've got like a metal bin and an ashtray and then a bag, they're a reseller. They're not a manufacturer. A manufacturer will have one range of products, and they will be dedicated to that range of products. For example, they might make printers, and they will just have 70 different variations of printers. If they make bags, they'll have bags and purses there. They're not going to really deviate from that. They all will specialize in something. You very rarely will find a genuine manufacturer that's got a really broad range of products. And actually, if you want to really invest in your products properly, then you need to go direct and find the specialist for making those particular products, because then you get the best results. It's way more realistic that they're going to be able to achieve what they're telling you that they can achieve, and they've got the skilled staff there to be able to do that job, you know, and that's really, really important.
And I think it's also really important that if they say to you, that if you realize that they're saying to you, they're continuously suggesting to you not to do it the way that you think that you want to do it, but they're suggesting that, I don't know, you don't want to have pointed corners, you want to have rounded corners, that you actually take that advice on board and think, okay, maybe the reason that they're giving me is not quite the right one, but that there's a good reason for them saying it would be better with rounded corners than pointed corners, or it would be better to, you know, I don't know, we need 3 days longer in order to do that. They're not telling you that just because they don't want to produce your goods, because a manufacturer is looking to have your business and they're looking to do the turnover. They want to have a good relationship generally.
Exactly. And I think that that's a really good telltale sign of a good manufacturer that's got your back, actually, is someone that isn't just saying yes to everything you want and doesn't just agree with everything you say. Because actually, in my opinion, when you have that situation and they're saying, yeah, we can do that. Yes, we can get that done in 3 weeks for you. That's not a problem. And yeah, we can source this material. We can source that material. We can definitely do it. And then when you start asking more questions, you're going to find out that actually, like you say, they've cut corners, or they've not actually done what they agreed to, or they're not able to do it. And so you have got to have your wits about you. You really have got to be switched on, especially when you're dealing with manufacturing halfway across the world, when you cannot physically even go and get on a plane and get into China at the moment. Like,
Yep.
you know, it's very, very difficult. You've got to know really what you're dealing with. And so I 100% would recommend working direct with a manufacturer and tapping into their expertise and creating an environment that's safe for them to tell you the truth as well. I think that the culture is very different, and I think that you've got to be so respectful. You cannot be losing your temper or throwing your toys out the pram if something doesn't go your way, and you've got to be able to listen to their feedback. If someone's telling you we can make it like that, but it might not work, you need to listen to them, because they've probably built like thousands of variations of what they're currently working on for you. And so it's really important that you value their feedback and their expertise, definitely.
Yeah. And I think that especially for Asia, it's really, I mean, from a cultural perspective, it's very difficult for Asians generally, but especially in China, it's very difficult for them to say directly no. So if you do start to feel that there's resistance to whatever it is that you want to have, then you've got to have a little bit of empathy, haven't you? And read between the lines as to what they're telling you, until your relationship reaches that point that they feel confident to turn around to you and say no. And whilst none of us like to hear no, it's sometimes what we need to hear in order to be on the right track.
100%. No, you're dead right. And you know, that's what I mean. Like, you've got to create that environment where you've got open conversations and you're not losing your temper. And you know, I think you've got to really appreciate where people come from and what their environment is like when you're dealing with other people. You know, we are so like liberated in the UK. We, you know, can pretty much say and do most things, and we've got to take into account that's not like that in all countries. And so, you know, there are certain like cultures where it is a bit stricter, or there's certain expectations of people, and they're brought up to behave in a certain way, or to, you know, like you said, like not say no. You know, this is what you need to do and you need to do it. And no, it's not an option. So I think that you've got to really try and understand, and like you say, read between the lines and build that relationship and build that trust with people. And I'm really lucky, you know. I think definitely the last production run that I did, I had a really great relationship with the lady I was working with in China. And even then, though, I was disappointed to experience a delay, and that wasn't communicated with me properly. And actually, I didn't feel like angry towards her. I felt like, what could I have done better to pick that up before it became a problem? That makes sense, because I was like, well, I felt a little bit sad that she didn't feel that she could tell me, because she was so apologetic when she did tell me. I was kind of like, okay, why didn't you tell me that before? But then I thought, well, okay, that's my bad. I need to learn the right questions to ask at the right time and to get better at that, you know.
But I'm sure that at the beginning, when you made your first when you worked with whoever was your original manufacturer, when you like made the first order, that maybe you wouldn't have picked up on that quite in the same way? Because
oh my God, like, yeah, the first order to now is like, honestly, like polar. I have learned so much, put it that way.
yeah, I've been following along for quite some time. I think pretty much from the start of lockdown,
Yeah.
and and so seeing this kind of learning curve of supply chain issues that neither you nor the manufacturer could do anything about, and
No.
all the other things that came in between with flash lockdowns and
Yeah. And I think like the crazy thing was that, I don't know, like whenever I started and I thought, oh, this is a great idea, I'll do it. And then like all these things kept happening and I thought, oh, there's got to be someone I can ask that's going to know what to do here. And I'm quite good at researching things and finding people and finding the right person to ask. And I was finding really experienced people, and they were like, we don't know what to do. This has never happened before. Like, we have no idea. What are you thinking about doing? This is what we're thinking about doing. And they were like, well, and that was kind of it. I was kind of like floundering around thinking, what do I do now? Actually, like, what do I actually do? And no one knew any of the answers. So it was just like the wildest time.
Yeah. I mean, especially the first couple of months were definitely different.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the shipping crisis was by far like the like biggest spanner in the works that I've ever come across in my entire working life. I just cannot even tell you how much of a, like, still even now I still feel the effect of that shipping crisis. Like, has such a bad effect on my business. It took me a whole year to recover from that after that happened, because I sold out on pre-orders, and at that point shipping was like 6 weeks, and then it went to 6 months, so pretty much overnight. And then the prices went up and it was extortionate. And then everyone had the same idea at the same time, like, let's air freight the stuff in. And then the price to air freight everything in was so expensive.
And people were still air freighting things like masks and
yeah,
and PPE and all of that kind of stuff. So that was taking up a lot of the air freight capacity as well. It was kind of contributing to the
and then at that point I realized, like, I can't let all, like, the very first people that have invested in my brand down and make them wait 6 months now. Like this, I need to pull some of that stock and air freight it. And that's what I did. So I lost money.
I'm sure. Yeah. I mean,
Like,
I've air freighted stuff in the opposite direction often enough when there's been production problems, and it hurts. It really hurts.
Yeah. But I'm glad I did it though. It's worth it.
That's the main thing though, isn't it? It's been worth it, and you're still here and you're still going and still growing.
Yay.
But I mean, are there things that you sit and look back now and think, I wouldn't do it like that again, I would do it differently? I mean, obviously some of the stuff with the shipping prices, those are just things that, I mean, basically everybody who was shipping, especially from China or from Asia to Europe, was hit by the same prices. In the other direction, it wasn't quite, it was bad, but it wasn't quite as bad.
Yeah.
And I mean, but those are things that is literally force majeure, and you can't really do out about it, unfortunately.
No, you can't. Do you know, actually, like, I've thought about that and like reflect on things quite often, and like I try and learn as I go and do things better the next time. But honestly, like, looking back over that period, it was a really, really difficult period. I don't really think I could have dealt with it any better than what I did. In any way. Like, the main takeaway would be don't sell things on pre-order. Like, But then I've just done it again, so would I do it differently? Probably not. But yeah, I think like during that period of time, like you say, it was just, you just had, it was firefighting.
Yeah,
That's what it was.
everybody was firefighting.
Yeah.
Everybody was firefighting. However
100%.
experienced you were, everybody was in full crisis mode at that point.
Yeah, so it was literally like, right, I need to just survive this year and like make sure that customers are happy. That was what I thought, and I just thought, well, even if I do all of this year and I make a loss or don't make any money, at least I'm building the brand, and at least it's not all gone to waste. And that was my main concern, was making sure people have like a good customer experience and keeping the brand going, because I just thought this at the moment, or that back then I thought that was like starting to build the foundations of Carter bags. And the last thing that I wanted was to start off on
The wrong
thanks
foot.
for your money, but you're going to have to wait 6 months for that bag. Or, I was just like,
Yeah.
I can't. Honestly, like I cried my eyes out because I just couldn't bear the thought of letting people down like that. I know it's only a bag to most people, but to me it was like, I've just taken someone's payment for something and now I'm letting them down. And it's not just 10 people, it's like hundreds. So that to me was just the worst feeling in the world.
I can imagine. That is just,
like,
gosh. And so fast forwarding back to today, you have a big tower, the
yes.
the leaning tower of Somerset is in your kitchen, right?
Yeah. So yeah, just behind me there's my living room, and it's just, it's absolutely packed. The garage is full as well, and then I have like some other storage as well, and that's full now as well. So there's a lot of staff at the moment, a lot of packaging to go with the bags as well, like the cardboard boxes that they get sent out in are in bundles and stuff, and that takes up quite a lot of room. So yeah, I really placed a big order on my last production run. I really stretched myself. I actually kind of knew when I placed the order that I didn't have that enough money for the whole order. But because of the delays and because of, I was sort of trying to think like you said, like what could you have done differently previous? The answer is get more stuff in and make sure that you've got enough to sell for like a period of time. Like how long is it going to take for another production run and to get it here? And then you've got to think like super long term now, whereas maybe like 2 years ago you didn't have to think like that. And actually the issue there is then cash, like how much money have you got? Because not only have you got to buy that stuff and bring it in, and it's not going to sell straight away because you're buying in such large quantities, you've got to store the stuff as well, and there's an overhead to that too. And then any money that you do make is kind of tied up in the next order that you can't sell then for another maybe 6 or 7 months. So it's a tough game at the moment. Anyone that's looking to manufacture a bespoke product, you've got to be prepared to do all the legwork and not take any cash out of that business, because you've got to get to a point where you can order big enough quantities that any disruptions along the way aren't going to mean that you go out of stock. And that's hard. That's the hardest bit about it all right now, I think, is the cash flow. That's tough.
So at the moment, your process is that you're taking pre-orders. You order with the manufacturer.
I only take pre-orders once I know for a fact that stuff is going on a ship.
Right. Okay.
I will not take a pre-order prior to that. And actually, so I wouldn't take pre-orders for a product that wasn't in
manufactured already.
No. And even now, because things happen and you cannot predict them, and it comes out of nowhere and you cannot even imagine what's going to happen, like, in my experience. So I actually placed an order for some samples for a new range a couple of weeks ago, and luckily this guy had said to me, yeah, you can get the order in, but I just want you to know that COVID levels are creeping up. There's potential we might go into a lockdown. And I was really grateful that he told me that, because I have another manufacturer that I work with as well, and I was kind of said to them, and they didn't mention it to me at all. They were like, yeah, place the order. And I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna like wait and see what happens here. And I was Googling, but it's very difficult to find any information because obviously information is limited coming out of China. So you've got to get information from the horse's mouth to get a realistic picture.
Yeah.
And so he kind of said that to me, and I said, that's fine, I'm going to place the order now, but if you go into lockdown, obviously you do, there's nothing we can do about it, but like I'm going to place this order knowing that's a risk. And yeah, within like a few days they went into a lockdown, and now Guangzhou is got huge restrictions on, and it's a massive manufacturing hub, and there's huge riots going on now, which is really completely unusual, because it's really not safe to riot anyway, but especially not in China. And so you just think, like how what are those people going through to be behaving like that? That's how I think. And I have checked in with the people that I know there and said, like, are you okay? And unfortunately they're all fine and stuff. But yeah, I mean, if I was to start taking pre-orders before, like when those samples come in and then they start manufacturing and then they lock down again, and my manufacturing is delayed by 2 months, and then it's a different period of time of year, and then shipping's oversaturated again because everyone else has had loads of delays, and
because Chinese New Year is coming up.
Yeah, Chinese New Year is coming up, so that I was hoping to get my new stuff in manufacturing and on a ship before Chinese New Year. Yep. I'm not even sure if that's going to be possible now.
Tight. I would say, if you haven't got if your samples are not yet manufactured, I would be certainly nervous about, because if they're going to get it out of the country, like through customs clearance and into a container and through customs clearance and on a ship before Chinese New Year, they need to produce, to be on the safe side, they need to produce before the end of the year.
Yeah, exactly.
The calendar year.
Yeah.
Because
so I already...
they'll be closing down. When is I haven't got the dates in my head of Chinese New Year, but Chinese New Year is quite early, I seem to think, next year.
Yeah. So, I mean, so this obviously was supposed to have been sorted out a few weeks ago, and then it would have all been fine. But again, completely nothing I could have done to plan for that. And I think, like, you just have to accept. You just have to go, right, well, there's nothing I can do. It is, that's the way of the world at the moment. It's
out of your hands, isn't it?
Other people can only do their best, and you've just got to roll with it. 22nd of January. I was going to say January and February.
Yeah, I was going to say 25th of January, but 22nd. Okay, thank you, James.
I actually thought it was a little bit earlier than that.
So, well, that is good if it's not before that time, but
James is probably right.
I'm sure it needs to be, the stuff needs to be manufactured and then on a container first week in January, doesn't it? To be out of the country before Chinese New Year.
Yeah, so I've just got to play it by ear really and see what happens, because there's no such thing as planning if, like, the whole of the city is
locked down,
in turmoil. Like, and you'll know, Kathryn, in China there's different provinces, and those provinces generally manufacture a certain thing, and all of the manufacturers will be based in that particular area. So a lot of the bag manufacturers are in Guangzhou, and so the whole, like, Guangzhou is
it's the heart. I've been through those bag markets.
Yes. So what can you do? But you just got to roll with it.
Yeah. And let's hope that by the end of November that Guangzhou at least will be relaxing a little bit. That they'll have stopped the growth of COVID. I think they had 3,000. I mean, I think they had 3,000 cases, which, to be honest, in a city the size of 3,000 daily cases, which in the city the size of Guangzhou is not actually that big, but you know, the UK
And also,
would be like,
I just feel bad for the business owners, you know, because
totally
you know, they've got kids,
nightmare.
They've got families to feed, they've got loans to pay, they've got bills to pay, they've got their rent to pay, and if
they've
they're
got
not
customers that they're disappointing.
Exactly. And then, you know, I do worry for them because that's their business at the end of the day, and that's their livelihood. And it's not like they've got a furlough scheme or anything like that, you know, to fall back on it. So it's really difficult for them, really difficult.
Yeah. So how are you, I know this is a little bit of a jump, but maybe you can just explain a little bit how your quality control process is, just for some of the people who are listening, because I'm sure that there are a few people who have literally no idea how that works for a product that you're producing. Let's say if I say virtually, you're not producing it virtually, but you're in a virtual situation that they can show you a product, they can show you the seams, they can show you the stitching and the clasps and so on, but you're not in Guangzhou.
No, I'm not.
I was directly above Guangzhou in the last 2 weeks twice, because our plane flew directly over Guangzhou. So I was like 15 kilometers. I was like,
I would love to go. Like, I so want to go to China. I would love to take Matilda as well. It's just so difficult because of the situation, and you know, it's just not the right time.
No,
I think
it's
it
not
would
the
be
right.
too risky, especially with kids. But so quality control. Okay, so the main thing where you want to start is with samples. Samples are really, really important. And also, you know, if you want to, the quality control actually starts with design, because the design's got to be right, and the design's got to be usable and functional, and it's got to last. So you want to make sure that you invest in your design and get a professional designer to help you with the design, who's experienced in whatever it is you want to make. For me, it's bags, and I've got an amazing bag designer. Her name's Rebecca Stevenson, and I tell everyone, because if anyone wants to work with Rebecca, I highly recommend it. But she also does, you know, she's very talented and she's very technical, and she's very good with CAD drawings as well. So that's really where it starts. You know, if I was to draw a design, I do draw designs and I send them to Rebecca and go, make that a proper design, Rebecca. Because my design is like a doodle and Rebecca's is like a proper design. So she'll sort of bring them to life, you know, and then I can give a brief, a spec to the manufacturer. I can grab them, actually, one sec. Oh. I'm just breaking my whole house. So these are, I've actually ripped some samples off and stuck them on a board, but these are different. There's some of Matilda's drawings in there. Different material samples and stuff as well. So you want to make sure that you've got samples and things that you can actually feel the materials that you're going to use. Look at the thickness of them and get as much information as you can for all the different components of your product as well, because that's really important. You can't just leave people to their own devices and say, well, you're the expert, so you let me know, because everyone's out to make money at the end of the day and corners will be cut. You have got to be very on the ball. Yeah, you've got to know what's going into your product. Otherwise, you're going to run into problems. So, you know, I have different linings and different loads of different recycled materials and leather samples, and they're all different thicknesses and softness and stuff. So I mean, I really get involved in every single aspect of the bags, and I know all of the manufacturers for most of the compartments of the bags, the components of the bags as well. So I'm quite involved in that way. And then I'll request a sample. When I get the sample, I'll have a look at that sample and really, like, honestly rip it apart. Like, check every part of it, because you need to.
Yeah, it's
basically you gotta test that stuff. So yeah, I'll test rigorously, and if there's anything that's not 100% right on the sample, I won't go into production knowing that there's something not quite right. I'll say, no, you need to make that again, please, and send it over again. I want to see what's going into production, not this is almost right, but this needs to change, and that needs to change, and that needs to change, because you're always going to be disappointed then. You need to make sure that there's clear communication, and there's language barriers as well. So just because you think you've communicated something clearly doesn't mean they've heard what you've said very clearly, or they might not have understood what you said very clearly. So you really need to make sure that you've got a finished article of exactly what you want in front of you. And then from there, you can go into the production and manufacturing stage. And I would say to anybody, do not be afraid to be picky at this point, and to be on the case, and to ask for videos and pictures and video calls while that's in manufacturing. And I am a bit of a nutter. I don't really sleep like as much as I probably should, like as much as what I think other people do. I've been told I wake up so early, it's ridiculous. So I'm always on the phone for like first thing in the morning, like even from beds, like at like 4 a.m, 5 a.m, talking, saying, how's that going? Like, can you, and then I'll get up and get a coffee and be like, oh, can you hop on a quick video call, have a look at video call and see what's going on. Also getting third parties to go and actually visit the factory. And on my last production run, I think I had like 3 factory visits, independent factory visits, with reports as well. And you need to make sure that you're getting reports that have got visual images in, and videos. But also you need to take responsibility for your own quality control. So for me, I need to like write a brief and say, this is what you need to look at. This is what you need to check. It's no good getting some random company that you've not worked with before and asking them to go and check something when they might not know what they're looking for. It's your product. You know what needs to be right on that product. And if you're not educating people that you're working with on what they need to be looking for, then something's going to go wrong. Or how are they going to know what it is that you want them to look for? They're not mind readers. So I think most cases it's to do with clarity, and it's to do with providing like a good brief, a good spec, paying attention to detail, and communicating with people really well. And that's what you need to do. And that means like verbal communication, email communication on Messenger, and like video calls as well. And that's the only way you can do it from remote and make sure that nothing's going to go wrong, in my opinion. And you need feet on the ground as well. You need someone in the area that can go in and physically go and look at stuff that's independent from the actual factory too. And that's it, the only way that you can do it, in my opinion. I don't know, what do you think, Kathryn? Am I doing it right? Because I've literally winged it.
No, I think that is a pretty comprehensive list of how people should be doing it, especially with that focus, like you mentioned, that you've got to have the sample, not getting enough samples, like not getting enough iterations of samples is a false economy.
It is, because it's expensive when you're in the sampling phase. It is expensive. And inspections, you know, if you're going to have multiple inspections as well, you could be looking at, you know, a few grand. But I think it's worth it. I think the potentials of things that can go wrong is huge. And when you look at the value of that versus these little steps that you put in, it might add to your overall cost. But, you know, if something was to go wrong, that's going to be massively expensive and you could lose your business.
Well, exactly. And I think that realistically speaking, once those goods have left China, you've got almost no, you might on paper have redress with the manufacturer, but from a practical perspective, what form of leverage do you have? They've already got your money. and the goods are out of the country. So, you know, as
I
far as
know,
they're
I have
concerned,
heard some proper horror stories,
mhm,
actually, that like you don't even want to think about it. But yeah, like I think I've heard some terrible horror stories about things that have gone wrong for people that receive product which is nothing like the sample, like even a completely different color, completely different size, things
mhm,
missing off of it, things turning up when they haven't been packaged properly and they've been absolutely destroyed on the way over. Actually,
yep,
I've heard stories about just things just never being sent as well. Like you've got to protect yourself, and you've got to take every step that you can to protect yourself from something going wrong.
and I think that the more research that you do up front, and that includes the kind of design stage, sampling stage, spending all of the time that you do communicating and giving briefs to people, all of that research makes itself then paid, doesn't it? In the sense of you've done your due diligence to make sure that you've reduced your risks as much as possible.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is as well that they will take you more seriously.
Yes.
Because if you're just sat there going, well, I don't really know, and you're the manufacturer, can you tell me what to do? Can you do the design for me? They're not going to take you seriously at all. They will literally take your money and run.
Hmm.
They'll send you
And
over a bit of rubbish, and you'll be
they'll
like, "Oh, I've just wasted thousands of pounds." You have got to take, like, it's taken me a long time to feel as confident as I do when I'm dealing with things,
yeah,
and I definitely notice the difference in how I'm being treated by other
treated.
people now,
Yes.
because I'm not
Because they're not
afraid
just
to
taking your
assert
money and laughing
myself.
all the way to the bank, are they?
Yeah, exactly. You've got to be able to assert yourself, and not in a rude way, not in a "Oh, I'm the boss,"
No,
but you've
just
got, yeah, actually, these are my processes, and this is the information I need from you, and this is what I need from you, and be
yes.
really clear about that, and don't be afraid to do that. It's your money at the end of the day, and you've got to know what you want to get out of it, and not wait for other people to tell you how things should be going.
Yeah. Well, not just that, but it is the name of the bag is also, it is your name. You've got
I
nowhere to
know.
hide. It's not like, I mean, if you'd called the bag, I don't know, lady's laptop, then that's very kind of generic, anonymous, isn't it? But
Yeah.
when the bag is your name, then
No
you
pressure.
literally, you are literally the one who guarantees the quality and the level of customer service that
Yeah.
people and the experience that your consumers are going to be having.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Oh, and the other thing I do to quality control is I check everything before it gets sent out as well. Because you have to, and especially when stuff's handmade, there's always going to be a tiny percentage, and this
yeah,
is with all retailers as well. Like
yes,
any product that you get, there's always going to be a small percentage that doesn't quite meet your quality control standards. So,
yes,
like for example, I went out for dinner with a friend last night, and I gave her one of the cart bags because it had like a tiny scratch in the
hmm,
top of it, from must have been maybe from like being in transit, or I have no idea how it would have occurred, but there's just a tiny scrape in the leather where it looks maybe like it's been caught by a knife, maybe it was like packaging or unpackaging or something, and
or
I'm like,
caught by a ring,
yeah,
somebody's that
yeah.
kind of,
So, and I'm like, I can't sell that to a customer, and my friend loves the bags. So I thought,
hmm.
well, I'll give her one. And like, I will check for stuff like that, and I'll look over it before I send it out to someone, because I don't want someone to receive something that isn't perfect, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
So I think at every stage you've got to be aware of that, and that's how people come back again, because they know that you care. And actually, if anyone ever contacted me with a problem, I look to think that I would resolve that problem for them straight away, you know. So
yeah.
I think that's really important, definitely.
No, absolutely. And I think that that is one of the things that, okay, there are things that are definitely out of your control that you cannot influence.
Yeah,
Um, how long it takes a container, whether that container gets stuck in Hamburg or it comes directly,
or Antwerp, or like anywhere. I was like, why is this container doing a tour of Europe? It was supposed to go from like, that was crazy. Once a ship's delayed, it's like delayed at every possible stop then, because it's lost all of its like berthing spaces, which I did not know that. That was a learning curve as well.
But I mean, at the end of the day, you can't control that. The only thing that you can control, isn't it, is the experience that your customers have with you. And I think that if they know that you are going to communicate also very directly and very as openly as possible with them, then they also know that you're transparent with them, that you're not trying to hide something. You're not taking the money and running away and hiding.
No,
because
and actually, that's why I did pre-order deposits this time, was because I didn't want to take the full amount. But at the same time, there was a lot of demand for the bags as well, so I wanted the people that wanted to get them to be able to secure them, but at the same time I didn't want to take the full sum of money off people and then leave them waiting if there was any delays. And there was delays, and I'm so glad that I did it that way this time round. So because I never would do a pre-order in the same way that I did it the first time, because number one, you're making a promise that you just can't keep. You have to be able to say to people, this is the way the world is at the moment, and that's the best I can do. That's the best assurance I can give you, and be honest about that. Or you have to, and then be upfront about, you're going to part ways with that money and you might not get this for a while. Or just take a deposit, and then it's a nominal amount. Know what the demand is then. How much time it's going to take you to turn that around and get those orders out. And that you can meet those expectations then, and you can plan ahead for future sales. So I think that's important. Like you said, manage expectations, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, would you recommend to other people who were looking to start a product-based business that they should go ahead and do it with overseas manufacturing and knowing everything that you do now and all of the difficulties and so on?
I'm literally working on a project with one of my friends at the moment to get her started. So I would recommend it. I think that you've got to go into it with your eyes wide open. And you've got to manage your own expectations for what you're going to get out of that business in the very early years. It's not what you see on social media a lot of the time. There's a lot of donkey work involved, and it's long hours, and things are going to go wrong as well. And, I think that if you're confident that you know how to research things, and you're confident to go and ask people for help, because you're going to need to go and ask people for help, and you can deal with the stress of it, then I would say go for it, because what's the worst that can happen? And I always think like that, what's the worst case scenario here? And I think if I can deal with the worst case scenario, and I can live with the worst case scenario, like the worst case scenario for me is that I would go bankrupt, and I can live with that. I don't care. I'm like, okay, I could live with that. If that happened and I had to put a big announcement out and say, well, guys, it didn't work. I've lost loads of money and this has all gone horribly wrong. That would be the worst case scenario for me. And actually, like, it's not going to kill me. I'll be fine. Like, I'll probably be lick my wounds, and then I'll move on to the next thing. I think if you can be realistic about the level of work that you're going to have to put in, and you've got your eyes wide open to the different issues that you could come up against, and you can live with that and you can work through it, then go for it. Because I think that this next year now for Carter Bags is going to be massive. That's how I feel about it. I think like the next few years are going to be significant, and I think I'm going to have a great growth over the next few years. But then I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't go through the whole like first bit that's been like, honestly, like, I don't want to say torture, but like, it's part
a baptism of fire.
Yeah. Some of it's not been very fun, I have to say. Like, and financially I've stretched myself at times as well, and that's been tough because obviously like I have responsibilities too. So yeah, and I don't own a house or anything, so literally like I probably could have put a deposit on a house and stuff rather than do the bags, but I haven't. I chose to do the bags. So you've got to be willing to take a risk, right?
Yeah, you've got to accept that there are consequences to what you decide, haven't you? And that you can have everything but not you can have anything but not everything all at the same time.
I love that. I want that on a t-shirt.
Well, you've got t-shirts. You have it on your t-shirt. Either that or we have to find Zainab. Zainab is the queen of merch.
Yeah.
T-shirts. So yeah. Anyway, I think because my last question was going to be where do things go from here for Carter Bags after this tough beginning? But I think you've already answered that to a large extent. So maybe just as a last point, where should people go to buy a bag?
Yeah.
When they want one as a Christmas gift, or they want one just because it's Thursday and because you've got gorgeous bags, where do they go?
Yeah, so you can find them on carterbags.com. That's where they're available. And there's also camera bags on there as well, which they're not laptop bags. They're like kind of like day to evening style, like crossbody bags, and they're quite cool. I really love them. I really want to do some more of them in the new year. So yeah, I mean, next steps would probably be I'm broadening my marketing mix at the moment, and also I am in talks with a retailer as well, which is looking
very exciting.
So yeah.
Okay, well, it'll certainly be interesting to watch the progress and to enjoy seeing you succeed massively in the next couple of years, because I think that when you've had such a tough beginning, then let's say, after that you've got a really solid foundation, haven't you, for growing for the next
if I come up against any problems, Kathryn, you'll be the person I'll be messaging, so don't worry. What do I do?
when do you want to start? When you're looking to concretely grow your exports, then we'll talk again, and we'll see what we can do to have some fun on that perspective as well. I think because exports should be something that again, it's something you've got to go into with open eyes, and if it's going to be fun, then you've got to go into it with your eyes wide open for sure. So,
yeah, definitely. A lot to I've got so much to learn about lots of different things, I think.
Yeah, but anyway, thank you so much for this lovely conversation today. It's been great hearing about things from, let's say, from the opposite side of the coin to what I often am dealing with, but in a way it's still all the same issues of quality control and building your relationships and making sure that you're working with the right partners and knowing how to deal with those partners. So it's been really interesting. Thank you very much for being so open.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on as well, and thank you as well to everyone that's commented and stuff. And so I'm not very good at multitasking and reading them, so I'll go in and reply in a bit.
Yeah, same here, because actually we can't reply live to the in the chat here. We can't reply live to LinkedIn, unfortunately. To YouTube we could reply live, but not to LinkedIn. So we can go back and do that later. I'll be going in as well later. And yeah, so thank you very much, and we will talk again soon, I'm sure.